Baumgartner. If you have not made it out to my UNC Charlotte table, I know I have not always been there. I've been sort of moving around the building today. But I still have some handouts out there. Lean Six Sigma certifications for PDU credit. We have other courses for PDU credit. If you're an accountant or an engineer, some of our courses count for both CPE and PDU, or PDH and PDU, so you can double dip, so just keep that in mind. But I've got all that information out on the table if you need anything, and I can answer any questions. But we're glad to have you here today, this afternoon, and I'd like to introduce Sonja Stetzler. She's going to be your speaker today, and she's actually president and founder of Effective Connecting here in Charlotte. She provides communication coaching both to individuals, and she'll bring her coaching skills in-house to companies. Has done that for quite a few companies here and around Charlotte. Her programs teach clients communication tools that positively impact their success. Obviously, we know how important communication is. Some of her clients include Microsoft, PepsiCo, GE, Time Warner Cable, and a lot more. She is a national speaker, and she also actually teaches here in Charlotte at Queen's University. So we're glad to have her. There she is. Thank you very much.
Did you know that according to the PricewaterhouseCoopers study, that over 50% of projects fail? These are not staff here, so you're familiar with this. Based on that same study, only 2.5% of projects actually met their targets for scope, time, and budget. And according to another survey done by Spikes Cavell, 57% of projects fail because of miscommunication. Does that surprise you? No. Okay. So imagine that you're a project manager and your projects succeed, that they met their targets for scope, for time, for budget. Imagine that there were no communication breakdowns. And imagine that because of your leadership, you were able to get a bigger project, bigger budget, more team members. It raised your visibility. That gave you more money in your pocket. How would you feel? Great. Yes. And it is possible. It is possible. A lot of my empirical data came from Andy's book, The Alpha Project Manager, where he did the study with actually 860 project managers that qualified for his study. And based on this study, out of the 860 project managers, only 18 were ranked by their stakeholders, by their clients, by senior leadership, and by the team members as being excellent. Only 18. And to break that further, if you're interested, I say we have about 50-50 in this room. 12 of those are male, and 6 were female. So I think maybe this field might be a little bit more skewed towards the male side. At any rate, the question becomes, what were the factors, and particularly in light of communication, that made only 2% of those project managers fall into the excellent range? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, with another interesting facet of this, and Andy touched on this on his presentation, was that the non-alphas, the 98% who were just average, as ranked by their stakeholders, on a scale of 1 to 100, rated themselves in about 82% having good communication skills. Interestingly, the alphas, the top 2%, also rank themselves in that same area. They rank themselves at an 84% with communication skills. However, when when we take a look at the stakeholder rating, the stakeholders ranked the non-alphas, the 98% and the 50% range. However, the stakeholders ranked the alphas in the 84% range, right on target. So this even raises bigger questions. What is it about ourselves, as Andy mentioned, that we tend to think we're better than we are? We do tend to rate ourselves better than we think we are. So let me ask you a question with regards to communication. What percentage do you think communication permeates your workday? Throw out a percentage. 90. You guys must have read this study. Because the study does show that 90% of your day involves communication, whether that is voicemail, email, text, informal meetings, formal meetings. It all involves communication. Communication is the lifeblood of project management. Would you not agree? Yes. Absolutely. So the three keys, the three communication skills, as stated, as the empirical evidence from the Alpha Project study show, the three main skills that we all need to do better with are listening, clear, concise communication, and building relationships, the network, the interpersonal skills. Because all this revolves around is trust. If you don't have trust, you don't have an effective team. Would that not be correct? All of these skills build trust. If you don't have trust with senior management, are they going to allow you to do certain things? Probably not. If you don't have trust within your team, are they going to accept change? If they're going to work with you, are they going to work with each other? Probably not. If you don't have trust with the client, if you haven't built trust there, what's that relationship look like? Probably not so good. So the three major steps, the three major communication pieces that we're going to talk about today revolve around these three components. And what we're building is we're building trust. Trust is a lot of things. Trust involves sincerity, integrity, doing what you say you're going to do within the time frame that you have given. Trust is consistency, providing the message in a clear manner, and predictability. When you say you're going to call a meeting every Monday at 8 o'clock, every Monday at 8 o'clock, there's the meeting. Confidence. If you don't have trust, you're not seen as confident. So it's an important factor of communication is that you're building trust. That's the goal. So let's start with the first component of communication. And I believe this skill is highly underrated and highly underestimated. Yet, it's one of the foundational skills that we have in communication. So let's try a little exercise here. I am going to count to 3. Well, first of all, let's put your hands about 12 inches apart. I'm going to count to 3, and then after I say clap, you're going to clap. All right? Are these directions understood? Yes. Okay, pretty easy, right? All right. 1, 2, 3, clap. Whoa! I thought we had agreement that you understood the directions. What did I say?
After you say clap.
Yeah, after I said clap, not before. All right, let's try this one more time. 1, 2, 3, clap. Yes. All right. Listening skills. Do you see now why I say they're underestimated? Yeah. So listening skills are things that we don't pay particularly a lot of attention to. But they're one of the most critical skills you can develop as a project manager. Now, we have a couple things that are going against us when we are talking about listening skills when it comes to communication. Number one, we are barraged with all of this noise all throughout our day. We've done this for a long, long time. What have we learned to do because of all this noise coming at us? Yeah, we learned to filter it, and we learned to tune it out. So when it comes to listening skills, you really need to work at becoming better listeners. The second reason why we don't listen as well as we should is physiological. People speak at a rate of about 120 to about 150 words per minute. However, you have the capacity for processing that information at about 400 to 500 words per minute. So, given that, you have the ability in that space of time to think about what you're going to respond to somebody else, what they're giving to you. That's a disadvantage for us. So we are working upstream to work against listening. We have to fight against that. So I'd like for you to work on a little exercise with me with regards to your listening skills. And I'm going to have Sam come up to help demonstrate this. So my goal today is not to only identify the 3 top listening skills that we need to improve to become better leaders and better managers, but also to equip you with tools that you can use and practice when you leave here. Now, it's no good for me just to provide you with information. I'll share with you something that's tangible, something that's useful, that you can take back with you. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. So the exercise that we're going to do is Sam's going to give me a sentence. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen and respond to her sentence, starting with the last word that she spoke. You don't normally do that, but I'm going to have to do it as well. So give us a topic. What's our topic today? Weather. Excellent. Okay.
Well, I really wouldn't count today, but I would say normally the weather in Charlotte is beautiful.
Beautiful is how I would describe the sunrise.
The sunrise, something I rarely see because I'm usually still sleeping. Actually.
Sleeping is what I love to do, especially when I have been up all night preparing for a presentation.
Presentations occur quite frequently in and around my office when we're trying to get a lot of information to a lot of people in a little bit of time.
Time is of essence. Thank you very much. So we made it look easy, but what I want you to do is to pair up with a partner, somebody sitting right next to you, and one person is going to be person number 1. You're going to start the conversation. Person number 2 has to listen and give back to you another piece of conversation. But they have to start with that last word that person number 1 has given them. Just like Sam and I did. Clear? All right, so you're going to work with pairs. I'll give you a couple of seconds to work with Time out. Okay. All right. So what was that like for you? Was it hard? Some hard, some not, okay? So what this exercise does, it focuses you to really listen. Because how many times have we already thought of our response when our conversation partner has not even finished their verbal thought? Right. So here's the other thing about listening skills. What we know about leaders and what the research has shown is that the most effective leaders have what we call emotional intelligence. They have empathy. And they're regarded as being excellent listeners. Listening is one of the best ways to motivate people. We've talked about motivational speakers. Well, actually, we should have motivational listening. Because when somebody feels heard, that's motivating. According to a recent Department of Labor and Statistics, whatever that department is, they've done a study. 46% of people who leave their jobs say they have felt unappreciated. Why? Because they weren't heard. They weren't listened to. It takes a little time. It takes a little effort. But it is worth that effort in order to improve these skills. It elevates your ability to lead and manage, to become a better listener. Now, there's a second skill involved with listening, and it's called active listening. This was developed, you've probably heard of the gentleman, Dr. Young. And active listening involves placing yourself in the frame of reference of your conversation partner. So, Sam, if you would... active listening involves replaying what you've heard so that your conversation partner can clarify if you have misunderstood. You're more accurate, and it places yourself in the frame of reference of your conversation partner. So tell me about a challenge that's going on at work.
Okay, well, probably one of my biggest challenges in what I do here at the university is I have some programs that need courses completely replaced every year. So I have to find brand new courses and hire brand new instructors each and every year.
Okay, so Sam, what I've heard you say is that because you have new courses every year, you have to find new instructors to teach these new courses that you offer to your clients.
That's right.
Great, thank you. So you see how I played back what she gave me. And this offers the opportunity for, if there's some misunderstanding, if I have gotten it wrong, but I do have to focus and place myself intently to listen and to play back what I just heard. So let's do a similar exercise, except this time the person who was person number 2 will start off with the active listening. So you'll reverse roles. So whoever started last time with your partner, the other person will start. And the person B will play the role of an active listener. Okay? So if there's a problem or challenge, start the conversation, and person B will play the role of active listener. Got it? All right, I'll give you a couple seconds to play with that.
Time. Time.
So, what was that exercise like for you? Was it easy? Okay, yeah, you have to focus. Yeah, absolutely, and that's the point. And that's the point. Now, there's another facet of listening that is often not talked about, because we don't only listen with our ears, we listen with our nonverbal communication as well. And I know some of us work virtually, but for those who are still in an environment where we're working face-to-face, your nonverbal communication accounts for a lot. Studies have shown there's positive communication, positive listening, and then there's negative. And studies have shown that when you are a positive listener, meaning you are adopting a positive body language, meaning you're open, you're smiling, you're acknowledging, your team members are more likely to approach you and to share information with you. Whereas if you're a negative listener, taking a defensive posture, a frown or a scowl, people are not as likely to approach you, and they're not as likely to share information. So, which makes a better team leader? Yeah, so open, because you're able to get more and better information. And what makes you a better leader? The better information that you're able to accept, the better decisions you're able to make. So body language accounts for at least half of how we're listening, if you're listening in a live situation. So think of team meetings, think of team facilitation. How are you, what's your body stance? What's your body language? What is it telling people? Because it'll tell people more than what you'll ever say. All right, let's move on to our next skill. Next skill with regards to communication is clear and consistent communication. So what do we mean by clear and consistent communication? Well, think about it. It's communication that's concise. How many characters are you allowed in Twitter?
140.
140, yes. How long is a Snapchat?
1 second.
And it's 8 seconds. Mm-hmm. Fine. 6 seconds. The other day I was trying to type in LinkedIn for a new connection. Guess what? Cut me off. I had too many characters. So in order to send a positive message, it needs to be short and concise. Part of that is in verbal or your written communication. I had a CEO that called about a year ago and wanted me to come in to work with his team. He had an executive team member that was writing emails that were way too long. Nobody was reading them. So we needed to do a little work with that. In one of your handouts that I gave you, and this is courtesy of Patrick McLean, who is a communications coach, a writing coach in Charlotte. What I'd like for you to do is cross out the words that do not belong. I'll give you about 10 seconds to do this. This is too wordy. You got it? Here's the answer. The business of writing is killing words. The rest was redundant. It was too much. Not redundant. It's too much. Yeah.
Yeah, you can take 3 more of those out.
Writing is killing words.
Okay. You're right. You could. You could. That would make it even more concise and more clear. All right. Let's work with the second one. Give you about 20 seconds to work with this one. All right, you got this one? Nobody has enough attention. All right? One more. Give about 30 seconds to work with this one. Get to your point. How one to begin with. Okay? All right. There's a lesson in here that if you want your messages to be read, they need to be clear and concise.
I'd like to send that email.
Patrick is very willing to share. Yeah. So generally about 4 lines. Also spacing and white space. If something is all in a block paragraph form, it's less likely to be read than if it's bullet pointed. And your sentences do need a noun and a verb. But the rest of it, extraneous. Now something else that the alpha managers did, that the non-alphas did not, was to be consistent with their communication. Consistency accounts for a lot. It makes you predictable, and again, it builds trust. Because essentially, all communication, what we're trying to achieve is building trust. So what do we mean by consistent and predictable communication? When you say you're going to meet at a particular time, you meet at a particular time. It also means getting to know what your stakeholders want in terms of communication. Because if you went to Andy's presentation, each of your stakeholders have different needs. What your senior leaders need is not the same communication that your team members need and want. Customers may need entirely different component of communication style, how often you meet, how often you communicate, than your senior management does. As an example that relates to this, a couple of years ago, I had the honor of coaching a manager who worked for a sports beverage company. He had the same presentation, yet he had different audiences, and he didn't realize this. So I asked him, who are your audiences? Who are you targeting? Well, he had 4. He had high school athletes, he had college athletes, he had athletic directors, and he had the parents of the teenage athletes. So I asked him to dive a little bit deeper. What does each audience need and want? So what do you think the top need or the top want for the high school athletes were? Thirst? No?
Taste. Flavor.
Oh, you're all missing this. You got teenagers?
Free.
Be cool.
Cool! It was a coolness factor. Yeah. So if he could insert in his presentation something about whatever the top athlete in that sport was and how cool it was that they were consuming his beverage, he had a sale. The college athletes, what was their top priority? Performance. Performance turned out to be their top. Right. How can I be better? How can I improve? How can I be faster, stronger? That was, so if he could target his message for performance, he would have that group. The third group was athletic directors. So what do you think their top priority was? Winning, correct. Performance, but also, yeah. So how much is this going to cost me? Can you throw in 3 dozen coolers at the same time? They had a different need. The parents of the high school athletes, what was their top priority?
Health and safety.
Safety, exactly, safety. Is this safe? Is it going to prevent dehydration? Is it going to make my son, daughter faster, better, perform higher? But safety was the top concern for them. So you can see how looking at your audiences in a different light, what do they need and what do they want? Sometimes it's a matter of just asking, what is it that you need? How often would you like me to communicate with you? What are the expectations of our communication? So asking and understanding what they need can help you tailor your communication plan to each audience. Something that I want to just mention that it's not talked a lot about is that when you are speaking with or presenting to an executive management team, what's not often told is that it's a good idea to always start with your conclusion. Start with your conclusion first, and then back that with your data. Oftentimes when I'm teaching public speaking, and especially for a more general audience, we start with giving the points and then ending with the solution or the conclusion. For executive teams, what is their priority? Time. They've got decisions to make. They've got things to do. So by starting with the conclusion and then supplying your data, you are satisfying an important need for them. So that may not have been something you were aware of. This comes from Frank Gilbert, who wrote Upspeak, who specializes in the presentations to senior management. Lastly, but not leastly, of the communication skills that allow the alpha project managers to excel and become excellent project managers, their ability to network and build relationships was a key factor in enabling them to be part of that 2%. Their interpersonal skills was what drove this factor. One example from Andy's book involves a project manager who needed data from IT in order to complete a project. He wasn't getting that information. The IT person stalled. So the project manager happened to have a relationship with the CIO based on prior work and knowing this individual for many years. So instead of looking at this as going behind the IT person's back, it was in the best interest of the organization, because without getting access to this data, it was going to be more costly, and it was going to put the project behind. So by reframing the situation, and he had a connection, he was able to use that to get the project done within a timely manner and within budget. So how do you build that network? It's the interpersonal skills, it's the small skills, it's the small things. 30 years ago, when I first started my career, I started with Marriott as a manager. And one of the first things that I was assigned to do, and at that time it was beyond me why I had to know this information, but I had to know not only my employees' names, and there were about 30 of them, I had to know if they had kids, how old they were, what kind of car my employee drove. I didn't know what I needed to know this for, but it's that personalization. It's knowing something about them that helped to build that relationship. Something personal, not too personal, but personal enough where they could see that I had an interest in something that they had and were doing. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to coach a young rising potential with the energy company here in town. And she was a woman in an all-male environment. And it was hard for her to break in this group. So one of the things that we were working on was to build her network. And I asked her to observe someone she felt that was really fairly networked within her organization, and it happened to be her boss. So what did he do every morning before he got to his desk?
Drink coffee.
Before coffee. Well, with his coffee.
Walk around. Say hi.
Yeah, he walked around and visited with every single person. He was anything he needed to get done, he got it done. And because of this, people were approaching him. He was very approachable and able to work with them. They felt comfortable sharing information. And as I mentioned before, with listening skills, with positive listening behavior, when people are willing to share with you information that makes you a better manager because you can make better decisions, right, because you have more information. Exactly. So working with her, she finally was in a place where she felt comfortable, at least walking through and saying hello to everyone before she got down to her work. And she had to work with somebody who was in a different apartment way over. And she goes, I don't know these folks. So what was my answer? Go meet them, yes. Go meet them. Have a coffee with them. Get to know them. And the next time you pick up the phone, guess what? They're going to be more willing to work with you because now you've got a relationship.
Do you have any extra tips for virtual if you're not allowed to fly around the world?
Right. Yes, we can't get on a plane and meet with them. So, do you meet as a group on the phone? Or virtual?
Yes.
Okay. So you may start your meeting with something personal. What's going well for you today? What's something important that's happened to you or with you within the last 2 days? When you start with something positive like that, it opens up people. Very much so. The other thing that I really am an advocate for, if you can do this, is when you're working virtually, is to use Skype or something where you can see your face. Face it. What do we do when we're on a conference call? Yeah. Who would ever listen on a conference call? I know, I've done it too. Right. Everybody's doing everything else. Email, social media, and then you're called on and you're like, oops, I don't even have the answer. Well, of course not, because you weren't paying attention. I have found that when I've done virtual meetings, and actually I get resistance with this. I get pushback because nobody wants to be on video. But I can tell you it is much more effective because you've got to have that face contact. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Anything else with regards to building relationships? So with building relationships, I call it the 3 I's. How do you build relationships? Well, with social media now, especially with LinkedIn, it's a lot easier than it has been in the past. And the 3 I's I call information, introductions, and invitations. Information. So for instance, on this past week, in one of my LinkedIn groups, I did see someone who was looking for a speaker on LinkedIn. I know someone in Iowa, a colleague of mine, who does an excellent webinar on how to use LinkedIn. Immediately I thought of her and said, I'll go give Teresa an email. And I shot it over to her. I hadn't spoken to Teresa probably for about, I don't know, a couple of months, but she rang in my head as I saw that ad. So Teresa, a couple hours later, emailed me back. Thanks. I didn't know this was available. I appreciate your thinking of me. I've just built, or just added another notch to our relationship. Information. Article that makes you think of someone, I shoot them an email. So what kind of information that you have that you can share with someone in your network? You know, I just saw this article and thought about you. Or this is an article on listening. Remember that seminar we went to? Yeah. Look, this is what she said. Or this lines with what she said. So something like that, something small. It doesn't have to take a whole lot of time. No, I don't spend an inordinate amount of time on social media or with networking. But when opportunities come up, definitely it's an opportunity to build on that relationship. Second was introductions. People are always appreciative when you can put people together that are like-minded, that have common interests. So if I have a couple of people that I know that, wow, you know what, this reminds me, you should meet so-and-so. Do you know so-and-so? No, I don't. Let me introduce you. So when you can introduce people that have common interests, you are helping out your giving. You're making that connection and you're building your network. Networking is all about giving. It's not about getting. When you're giving, people see you as a person who is willing to share and they're likely to reciprocate. But you don't get first. You're open and sharing first. inside your organization and outside your organization. A lot of my work comes through word of mouth. It doesn't come through applying. And it's all because of the network. Any questions around that? Yes?
Third one? Are you moving?
Oh, invitations. Thank you. Invitations. So what do I mean by invitations? Invitations don't have to be something that's actual physical. Invitations can be a webinar or, wow, did you see this? Did you see an invitation to something virtual? It can be that as well. So anytime you see an opportunity that you think someone in your network might have an interest in, offer an invitation. The least they can say, the worst they can say is, no, I already have a commitment. But it's an invitation and it keeps you front of mind with the people or person that you've invited. Questions around this? We're good. Okay. Build your network. So relationships are about like muscles. I love this quote. You have to work with them in order for them to get stronger. So if you're not taking an active role or if you're not putting out the effort to strengthen those relationships, for those of you who work out in the gym, what happens? The muscles go flaccid. You don't get stronger. So it's an important key to continue to work on your relationships. Now, all of these 3 communication tips are pretty easy, right? They're simple. Well, maybe they're not easy, but they're simple. Simple does not always mean that it's easy. And it takes time and effort to put forth and to have results. The communication traits of the top 2%, the alphas. Again, it's simple, but not always easy. So how do we make it easy and how do we incorporate this into what we do every day? Well, structure. Structure is how we do things. Structure helps us to stay in line. Let me give you a couple of examples of structure. When you go to the grocery store, what do you have? A list. Yeah, most of us have a list. A list is a form of structure. A list helps you stay within your budget, and a list can also help you make better choices with your food. Hopefully healthier choices, right? Any of you have an exercise app? MyFitnessPal or something like that? That's a form of structure. When you're inputting, and it's a guide, how many calories you should be eating, how much walking you should be doing, it's a form of structure. I can tell you that I've worked as a health coach years ago. Clients that I had that actually used the app lost significantly more weight than those who did not. It's about structure. Our environment influences our behavior. So one important key thing to note here is that if you don't have structure, you're less likely to succeed. Now, we take for granted, we have structure for a lot of things, but people typically get wary when it comes to working with structure with our behavior as far as our soft skills. How do you put structure around your soft skills? Well, Marshall Goldsmith, are you familiar with him? He wrote the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. He's an executive coach known internationally. He's an advocate for putting structure in your day. And what he's done is develop a tool, and it's at the end of your book, where what he does every day is go through a 20-section checklist. I think that's excessive myself, but I've divided into 3 categories. And the 3 attributes are around communication skills. Another part to this that Marshall did not mention, but it's also around reflection. There was an interesting study done by Harvard Business School where they first of all started with students. They took a group of students, they had a control group, they had a sharing group, and then they had a reflection group, and then a share and reflection group. The students were doing these brain teasers. The first group, they did nothing after they did the brain teasers. The second group was the sharing group, and with it was a reflective group. The second group after the brain teasers, they spent some time in reflecting. How did I do? How can I do better? And with the third group, they not only reflected on how they did, but they shared their experience with other people. When they went to the second round of brain teasers, the reflective group and the reflective and sharing group did 18% better than their control group. And they attributed this to the reflection process. So they decided to take this experiment out in the workplace. And they went to India to an outsourcing firm where this group of employees was being trained for a particular client. The training was 30 days, and they applied the same process. They had a control group, they had the reflection group, and then they had the reflection and sharing group. The first group, control group, they went home at the end of the day. The second group, they had a 15-minute period at the end of the day where they were to journal and reflect what they learned that day, what was their experience. The third group, they not only reflected at the end of the day, but they shared this experience with other colleagues. At the end of the 30-day period, the group that reflected and shared did 25% better on the final test for the trainings. Again, validating the importance and the ability for reflection can boost your performance. So essentially, that's what this is. It's a way for you, at the end of the day, to reflect. Did I listen with empathy? Did I use active listening when working with my clients, my boss, my team members? Second question, did I communicate clearly, concisely, and predictably? The third question, did I do my best to build positive relationships with the people I was working with today? So by reflecting and giving yourself a rating from 1 to 10, you're able to monitor your effort. And when you monitor your effort, eventually, over time, if you're consistent with this, you will become better. Any questions? Or what questions can I answer for you? Or have I put you all to sleep? Yes. I will have to, if you can give me your card, I will email it to you. We have more people than anticipated, and I thank you so much for coming. Yes.
The one item in the book on page 14 that I think is very important about tailoring your communication to your audience
Yes.
is another item.
Yes. Absolutely, and that's why there's blanks on this,
Yeah.
so that if you have other communication goals that you're working towards for improvement, you can also write them in there as well. That's a good goal, because oftentimes we don't tailor our communication to our specific audiences. Yes?
To piggyback on what you said before about virtual, in not only virtual, but in our global environment, oftentimes you only do have phone or texting, and language differences are very challenging. And any suggestions on how to better deal with that?
Languages and culture. I'm mainly talking about American culture because in my experience, if we say we're having a 2 o'clock meeting and with a culture that's not monochromatic like ours, it might be 2:30 before everybody convenes. So I have learned that I'm working with an international group that it's 2 o'clock American time. And when I say 2 o'clock American time, it's understood that, okay, that means 2 o'clock sharp. It doesn't mean, any time after 2. So an understanding of the culture and then using simple and concrete language, that is certainly essential. Because when you start using big $10 words, or when you start using language, again, that's not really concise, that confuses. And then also setting up the expectations from the very beginning. What are your expectations of them. And how can you best help them? What is it that they need that, by asking that question, how can I best help you? Is that helpful? Okay. So, and again, it depends on which culture and where. I realize that a lot of you are working virtually, and we could spend another hour on intercultural differences with communication, because there are plenty. Yes?
Much simpler than the question that was just asked is, you know, when I'm working with offshore people, often they're in India, they're at home. They're either on their cell phone or you know, their landline at home, which is typically not of the quality that they would have on an office desk phone. And between that and then the accents and then the fact that we're on the bridge line and there are delays, I find that after a certain period of time, I just can't focus on what's being said anymore. I'm just exhausted. And usually they're speaking in technical terms, of which I would understand maybe 3/4 if they were in the room with me. But, you know, any thoughts on how to make those kind of sessions more effective? Because we usually have customers on the phone. And so it's like, I can't understand what's being said. You know, when I get it and the customer says, I don't get what you just said, I repeat it, you know, with my New Jersey accent. But oftentimes I think we're all scratching our heads going, I don't even know where to begin. I've asked you to repeat yourself 5 times already today. I'm embarrassed to ask you 6th.
Go ahead.
Well, the first effort to outsource development of compliance training at BOA, and we're working with the offshore group, we did a couple of things that really paid off. The first was the manager of the group on this end flew over to India so he could see what was the environment there and understand the challenges they had in terms of understanding his team in the U.S. So there was a sense of understanding context. And then we made ground rules that if we didn't understand, we could say, could you please repeat that? And if people didn't know the answer, they should say, I don't know the answer, and that was okay. So we just kept reinforcing, it's okay to say, I didn't understand you, please repeat that. And that was not a social, you know, like the humiliation, because we all did it. The wild card is if you have a customer on the call, that's a different story. If you're just teaming together, you can set ground rules to make sure that it's okay to ask for repetition, to ask for him to say it another way. I would understand you without humiliating.
That's a great way to do that. My other suggestion was to, if you can, through email, ask the questions first, or have a short conversation, especially before the customer comes online, so that there can be some semblance of we're all on the same page here. If there's time to do that, that might also help facilitate the discussion.
Or instead of messenger, we prefer to type instead of telling, so that way it's easy to
Right. Because in some cultures, saving face is huge.
Yeah, and usually they're really, you know, the guy who I have the most trouble with, he's really smart. It's, you know, your kid in the background and your phone line is not great, and, you know, it's like,
Right, right.
And you're working at 9 o'clock at night, how can I complain? You know, you've just done a full day and now you're dialing into the call at night for us.
Right. So does that help and answer some
Yeah,
some
I think
questions?
that.
I know, we use IM to help with the questions. Did I hear your question right? And then there's no loss of face, because we're asking it behind it. And most of the time, that takes, I tend to speak in colloquialism, so then that just.
So it's everybody's
just blunt language, so that takes all that out of it.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion too, because we have phrases here down south, especially, and probably up north too, where if I say I'm happy as a pig in mud, somebody in another country is gonna think I'm awfully strange. Yes, you had a question over here.
Well, and also to remove your stereotype that's linked to accents of region, whether it's Boston, South Carolina, Mississippi. So maybe you may feel defensive because of stereotypes that exist around their accent.
But Well, the stereotypes about New Jersey are.
Yes.
I have a colleague that constantly interrupts when someone is speaking to them. He's not listening, and he's trying to get to the next point or something. How do you deal effectively with that with the thing you listen?
That's a good question because we listen in two ways. We listen for control, which is your boss, because the interrupting, the trying to steer the conversation, or you listen for connection, which is the listening for empathy, listening with empathy, and listening totally focused on the person. So maybe it's a point of, if you've had a conversation, I mean, this is hard to do, is addressing it with that person. I'd like to get my point across and not interrupt. That's the hard thing to especially if you're
Without being rude, right?
Yeah, I'd like to make my point. And if you're doing it virtually, that's even more difficult because somebody who is trying to control has that need and will continue to interrupt. So is there a point where you might have a conversation around that? I'd like to get my point. Would you mind refraining until I've made my point?
I find it very hard to be nice about it, though.
You just want to say, shut up, right?
In fact, I have.
Look at his wife's number. Look at his wife's number.
Right, and those kinds of folks are difficult to manage. And sometimes it's a matter of awareness. Sometimes it's a matter of it's so habitual that they may not even realize how disruptive it is with listening, that they're not listening. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Question, yes.
Yeah, Sonja, when you coach, do you coach at the individual level, or do you also coach at a team level, for example, with the companies that you're engaged with?
Both. I probably do more with the individual level, but I also have done teams, and teams are really interesting because of all the dynamics. Did that answer that?
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up to that is, what do you find the most, comparing an individual coaching to a team, what do you find the most important thing they're trying to get out of it? And how are you able to move them forward to address those issues?
I would say with individual coaching, it's more of finding their voice and really being able to deliver an effective presentation. For teams, it's more an understanding of one another, how to make the team work more effectively. Because we each have different communication styles. We have folks that are have a need to talk, but not be on point. We have needs, some people have a need to be dominant and to be directive. We have others that have needs to be supportive. And I think with teams, it's understanding how each individual on the team communicates and what their preference for communications are. First of all, raising that awareness for understanding, and then learning how to work with individual needs. Do that into that.
Yeah, and I think probably a lot of people experience this, being in an IT organization, serving the business, that gap between those two organizations is the challenge in the communications.
Right, and there's different expectations. What does each side need? What do they want? And how do you bring them together to be cohesive and work towards the same goal? Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for some folks. Yeah. Okay. Question, yes.
Mine's kind of a crazy reverse of your number three. How do you rebuild a positive relationship when you kind of throwing somebody under the bus in a heated moment and you really regret it, but it's one of those relationships that's kind of up and down and you feel like you're defending yourself at the same time you really need to understand about positive relationships in the work environment.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get back to square one? Publicly appreciating them?
That's one thing, but also privately. Probably one of the most difficult things as a communicator is to, and especially as a leader, is to be vulnerable, is to show vulnerability. Actually showing that you are vulnerable, that you make mistakes, in the long run will make you stronger, will make you rise in the eyes of the person that you've thrown under. So I would definitely do this privately and accept the vulnerability and being able to, we've seen it in today's world, how many organizations are not open, honest, and transparent. Look at VW. Right, so where does that lead us? Not in a good place. And it's very hard as humans. I mean, we want to be good. We want to excel. And it's hard when we make mistakes that, oh, wow, well, I'll just sweep it under. But what happens is that resentment grows and the gap becomes wider and it becomes more difficult to work with one another when that happens. So having managed and having made lots of mistakes as a manager and having to come back and crawl and really start from ground to help rebuild, it's not easy, but it's doable, and you need to keep looking at the end game. What is it going to look like in the long run? And it looks much better in the long run if we take that step back and be vulnerable for a short period of time.
Great, thank you very much.
So, okay, thanks. Any other questions that I can answer at this particular point in time? So I'd like to compare communications to football, being a Panther fan. They say football is a game of inches. And so is improvement with our communication skills. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small incremental steps over time. So what's really neat about this process, however, is like throwing that rock in a still pond. It has a ripple effect. One small positive change that you make will actually have a ripple effect into other parts of your business and your life. So my question to you, as we wrap up today, is what is that one small step that you can take to improve your communication? One quote that I found in Andy Crow's book, I thought this was invaluable. Until my deliverable is in my client's hand, my communication is my deliverable. I think that's very powerful because that's what you have. Until you have a deliverable, all you have is what you communicate and how you communicate it. So again, I ask you, what is that one step that you will take that will enable you to become part of the alpha group, part of that 2%? I thank you for your time.
Thank you.